to believe. When circumstances told him not to believe. See, God had promised Abraham and his wife that they were going to have this special child, and from him there was going to be a blessing of many, many people. But Abraham gets to be about 100 years old and still no child. He even asks God, do you remember your promise to me? And to which God responds, sure, be patient. You will have a child, and all nations are going to be blessed through you. That's a staggering, staggering promise of God. You see, Abraham and Sarah were beyond childbearing age. Our reading from Romans that we heard said that Abraham was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. But here's what is incredulous to me. God said it. And so even though it didn't make sense to him, Abraham believed it. And the Bible says this was credited to Abraham as righteousness. Now pay attention to that statement. This was credited to him as righteousness, because that is actually one of the more significant statements in the whole Bible. Because we're not hearing about Abraham today because he possessed some power or special favor before God that we don't have or can't have. As a matter of fact, the Bible says before Abraham ever did one religious observance, he believed God. He first believed God. That means he wasn't chosen by God to do what he did because he was more obedient than other people. And he had his fair share of questions and doubts. And if you look at the whole of the Bible, you find that he had a great deal of sin in his life. He often fell very short of God's glory. What the Bible just tells us is that after Abraham sinned, and before he was obedient, he believed God. And believing God changed the way that he felt about God. Do you know when it was that you can remember having your first moment of Abraham-like heroic faith? I pray there was a time, but this is when it was. It's when you followed God, even though what he said confused you, or scared you, or even when you didn't want to do it. Francis Schaeffer said, "To be a Christian is to walk with a victorious limp." It's a great, great quote. You see, what he's saying is that being a Christian doesn't mean that we have everything figured out. And it's never promised to us that you come to faith in Jesus and you're always happy with the way things are going in your life. As a matter of fact, it might be quite the opposite for much of your life. What it means is no matter how much we're limping through life, how hard it is, how big the struggle is, that we believe God more than we believe the validity of our feelings. In reality, it means like that man that I mentioned before who lost so much of his money, we laugh. It means we laugh. Albeit sometimes we might laugh right through some tears. And we say in faith, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. In all of it, blessed be the name of the Lord. Now maybe you're here saying today, maybe that's all fine and good for people like Abraham or pastors or certain really religious people. But I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that God was really speaking to situations like mine. I mean, this is really tough in my life. Can God really expect me to follow him in this? God hasn't given me an audible sign, a visible sign that he loves me and cares for me, and that he's worth this kind of obedience from me. And I'm here to tell you, yes, he has. Yes, he has. First, he followed through on this staggering promise to give a child to Abraham. But as amazing as that was, it was only a small glimpse of him following through on the promise to give to all of us another son. First off, remember, even though he was as good as dead and Sarah's womb was barren, Abraham believed God that there was going to be a son. And finally, one day against all odds, they had that son. His name was Isaac, which means he laughs. It means he laughs. That is the kind of joy that Abraham and Sarah had for this little gift that God had given to them. So you can imagine how hard it was, how hard laughter was to come by when only a chapter later in the book of Genesis, God demands that Abraham sacrifice the life of that son. But that's what God demanded of him. Now, can you think of anything? I don't think you can. Can you think of anything where believing in God versus believing God could ever be more tested? What do you think you would have done? I know that I run across seemingly faithful people who believe God with so much in their lives, great Christian people, great church members, and I have watched as they would be willing to throw all of it away if something happened to their kids. Love your enemies, we're told. Not if they do something to my kids, someone says with a mother's love. Forgive as you have been forgiven. Not that person who did that to my child. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and to harm you. If something happens to my child, I could never go on. Or the Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I might even be able to be convinced to believe that and say that when it even comes